Have you ever wondered what things you should avoid in parenting, or are you on the fence if a strategy that you use is actually beneficial for your kids? If so, this video is for you. In this video, I'll go through the things that we try to avoid in our parenting style. I'm summarizing our parenting style in this 3-part video series. If you haven't checked part 1 and part 2 yet, make sure you check those out after watching this video. Links will be down in the description as well. If you're new to this channel, hi there, I'm Vilma, I'm a mother of 2, and I'm here to tell you my honest point of view on all things parenting. I'm sharing my parenting journey with you because I hope that I can support fellow parents with real, honest, and relatable conversations. In all honesty, I feel that making this video was one of the hardest ones because the things that I'm soon mentioning are the ideal goal that I want to reach. Oftentimes I'm doing a great job dodging these pitfalls, but sometimes I don't, and that's when mom guilt can creep in. But that's when I try to remind myself of the love formula that I talked about in my previous video. If mom guilt or dad guilt is something that you're dealing with as well, I highly recommend watching that video. Anyway, off to the things that we try to avoid. Make sure that you're watching till the end of this video, where I'm sharing what I do if and when I do mess up. So the first one is generalizations that are not true. So saying stuff like, you always leave your stuff on the floor, or you never finish your plate, or saying something about your child's character that is not true. So you're such a bully, or you're so sensitive. Just trying to make this overall statement about your child's being is something that we try to avoid. It's not very good for their self-esteem, and also these generalizations are usually not true all the time. So your child is not never eating their plate. Sure, it might be that sometimes they eat a bit better and sometimes they don't eat that much, but it's not like they're never eating their food. So that's just basically lying to your children. That's why we try to avoid making these overgeneralizations. Obviously, physical abuse is something that we avoid. We don't spank our children, we don't hit our kids. I think the reason for that is pretty obvious. You don't want to be, or I don't want to be, parenting based on these fear tactics and making my child afraid of me, that if they make a mistake, as we all do, that they will be physically hurt as a result. So that's why we avoid physical abuse and physical discipline. Another one are empty promises. So I have this general rule for myself that do what you promised, don't promise what you cannot do. So for instance, if my child says, Mom, I'd like to paint, can I paint? And I say, yeah, sure, let me do these dishes first and then I will let you paint. I really want to make sure that I am taking the painting stuff out after I have finished doing the dishes, instead of me starting something else and then my toddler is just there waiting. Obviously, this relates to trust, so I want my children to be able to trust what I say. If I tell them that they will get something after XYZ is done, they will get it. Or if I tell them, something is not possible, then it is not possible. Another one are empty threats. So I feel that with these, you're just really doing yourself a disfavor and losing credibility in the eyes of your children. So for instance, if your child is having a hard time putting their shoes on and you say stuff like, put your shoes on now or we'll leave you home alone. Unless you're really willing to leave your child home alone, probably that's not something that you should use to get leverage over your children. On the topic of consequences, we try to avoid unrelated consequences. So for instance, again, eating, if your child is not finishing their breakfast, if you say stuff like, okay, if you don't finish your breakfast, I'm not gonna take you to the park. They're not really logically connected. So your child might be thinking, okay, but like, what does my breakfast have to do with stuff that is going to happen in the park? And it doesn't really have a lot of things in common. So maybe it's part of your routine, but I wouldn't use that as a fear tactic. So what I try to do is trust these natural consequences as much as I can. I do think that sometimes they don't work. So if you're interested in my thoughts about that, make sure to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified when a video on those come up. But if my child doesn't finish their plate, the natural consequence of that is that they will be hungry. So we are only gonna have food when it's mealtime, and if my child experiences hunger, I think that's, consequence enough for her to think again, like, maybe I should eat when there's food at the table, instead of coming up with these consequences that are not really logically connected. Another thing that I try to avoid is forgetting what is age-appropriate behavior for my child. So our kids are quite tall, and to be honest, at least our oldest one is really advanced in her motor skills and her verbal skills, and sometimes that really blurs the line for us parents, but other people too, what is reasonable to expect from her. So I'm really trying to remind myself of the things that are reasonable to expect and try to avoid expectations that are just set way too high. The second last thing that I will mention is comparing kids with each other. So they're all individuals with their own strengths and weaknesses and interests, and I don't think it's very fruitful to compare kids with each other. Last but definitely not least is yelling. And I think this is a pretty obvious one for many parents, and I don't think a lot of people want to yell at their children, but this is quite common. Unfortunately, yelling can increase anxiety, low self-esteem, and aggression in children, among many other things. And if you yell at your child all the time, they might just kind of tune out when you're using your normal voice, and they think that you only have something important to say while you're yelling. So if you're yelling so that you get your kids to listen, it might actually lead to you having to yell all the time to get them listening. However, I think there is a time and place for yelling. And for example, if you're in a sports event and you're rooting for your favorite team or player or whoever, that's when it's appropriate to yell. Or even more important one is that if there is something dangerous, we use yelling to catch the attention of other people, to warn them about this danger. But if you're yelling all the time, it really blurs the line for your child. When are you yelling just because you're frustrated, and when are you yelling when there's actually something that could make them be in danger? So those are the things that we try to avoid. But like I said, we all try, but none of us is perfect. Oftentimes we know better, but we don't always do better. So what do I do when I make a mistake with my kids? Actually, right before filming this video, I made a mistake with my child. I told her not to touch a lamp that is in our night table so that it wouldn't fall, and she didn't listen to me. I told her a couple of times, and eventually the lamp fell down and it broke. And I got angry and I raised my voice at her, and it didn't help repairing the situation. It didn't help with the lamp that just fell down. It just got everybody upset. So what did I do? I took the time to apologize to my child. I said, look, I asked you not to touch the lamp so it wouldn't fall, and it fell, and that's why I got upset. But it's not a reason for me to be disrespectful towards you, and I shouldn't have yelled, and for that I am sorry. And my toddler said, I'm sorry that I broke the lamp, and then we were good. And then we went to look at the lamp and see what we can do. Another thing that you can do is to play out the situation again in a way that you wish that you would have responded or that your child would have responded. So for instance, if I have asked my toddler not to touch her baby brother for the 300th time and she's still doing it, instead of getting, upset, we can relive that situation, and I can say, look, I wish that I would have just removed you gently from the situation so that we can calm things down, and then we can try again. Spiraling into mom guilt does not help anybody in this situation, but you can look at a mistake as a great opportunity to model another kind of behavior. So after you have made a mistake, say after I have raised my voice on my kid when I know that I shouldn't have, I can model them the art of humbling yourself and really admitting that you made a mistake and apologizing and asking for forgiveness from the other person and asking how could we make this okay again. And this is a very important life skill. There's so many adults who do not know how to apologize, and then we expect our kids to be apologizing for everything. So I think it's really important that we as adults and their parents are modeling the way we can apologize. It makes such a difference for them to see that they're not the only ones who make mistakes. Their parents also make mistakes, and that's when their parents are fair and honest, and they come to their children as well and saying, you know, we're all human, we make mistakes, but we can try and make that okay. If you like this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference for this channel. Also, I would love to hear in the comments, what are the things that you try to avoid in your parenting, and what do you do if you make a mistake and don't always live up to your code? Thank you so much for being with me in this video, and I will see you in the next ones. Bye!